So we are in the KG lounge, man. And today we got Capp versus Val. On the proposition God exists, we take an affirmative view. So minutes, so at 11:20 p.m. Eastern time, according to the calculus given the third model of the axioms, the debate will end. With that being said, you guys can get right into it.
Yeah, so just some preliminaries. I'm defining God as a necessary being that counterfactually explains all possible worlds. And we're gonna put the stage 1 in the chat, but I also have a stage 2. I wanna test it out, So we're gonna put stage 1 in the chat right now. This is stage 1 to get to there being a necessary being. And then stage 2 is gonna show how this being counterfactually explains all possible worlds. So let me know if you have any contention with the truth value of any of the premises.
Wait, real quick. Do you hold to wait? Can you define existence for me?
Yeah, what it means to exist is to have some information, right? We take ISR, informational structural realism type meta-ontology.
Wait, can you justify that?
Well, that's just analytically true on what I take existence to be, but if you want me to
That's
justify it
not what I asked.
insofar as why I adopt this given conceptual scheme, right? The reason why is because I don't think we have any concepts equivalent to something existing without information, right? I think information is necessary to exist.
Saying
Because we can do a
information is
simple
necessary
reductio.
to exist. Wait.
Yeah, we can do a simple
Wait.
reductio on the contrary.
What? Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Firstly, what you answered was not what I asked you. I asked for justification on ISR through meta-ontology. Secondly, having information on something being necessary for its existence, which one is not something that I would hold to, doesn't entail that's going to be a sufficient condition, because you could have necessary but insufficient conditions. Okay, so that's just going to be a conflation. It's going
I
to be
think it's
blundering
the
your
only
part.
condition.
But yeah, that's the point. That's what's in question. But back to the first point. When you're talking about Jesus Christ, when you're talking about ISR being meta-ontology being true, just don't see any motivation for that. You didn't answer the question.
Okay, so the reason, well, you kind of are like asking me a bunch of things, but you understand that given what I mean by existence, right, it's going to be analytically true that what it means to exist is to have information, right? You understand that?
That's just
We're
not what I
defining
asked.
existence insofar as having information, right?
That's
Yes or no,
very
retard?
relevant.
Yes or no, retard?
You could stipulate existence. That's what you mean when you say
Okay,
God
perfect. So
exists.
when you
But
ask for motivation, I
that,
don't know what you're asking me for.
but I just explained. Do you want to conclude,
You want to conclude already? Oh my God, this guy's actually
bro?
so ass.
I
So,
just
so look,
explained to you what
I'm
I
gonna break this.
asked.
So look, I'm gonna break it
You
down
don't
for you
under.
again, and I'm gonna recapitulate what happened, right? And okay, so look, you asked me, what does it mean to exist? I said, look, what it means to exist is to have information, right? That's ISR meta-ontology, right? Then you asked me to motivate that, and I'm saying that it's analytically true, right? Given what I mean by existence, it's just going to be true that the very meaning of existence is to have information. And I told you that the reason why this is justified is insofar as we can adopt this given conceptual scheme, because I don't even think it's epistemically possible to have a reality with no information whatsoever. Right? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that would even look like. I don't know if we have any concept akin to that. Right? So that's the motivation for why I take this definition of existence.
Bro, this thing
So
is
there you
so
go,
fucking
Richard.
retarded. Yeah, this thing is bro. I asked you for the justification on ISR. I've said this multiple times. I asked
Well,
you
that's
for the
analytically
justification
true.
on your definition. Okay, you want to conclude?
He's okay. Yeah, yes. You want to conclude?
I mean, we could conclude. That's fine. If he really wants to. I mean, it's been like 2
Okay.
minutes.
I'll
Right?
give my conclusions. Okay. So his argument presupposed
Wait, stop,
a
stop,
certain.
stop. The affirmative gives closing sirs.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, he asked me for justification for my definition of existence, which is just ISR meta-ontology, right? What it means to exist is to have information. And I told him the reason why we adopt this given conceptual scheme is because I don't think it's epistemically possible to have a reality with no information. I don't think we have concepts akin to those. And he didn't bring that into question. He didn't contend with that. He also didn't bring into contention the truth value of any of my premises. He just asked me what it means to exist and tried to do this weird thing where he pivots to meta. So yeah, we can let him give his closer.
Okay, now that I'm unmuted, pretty much his argument presupposed a specific theory of meta ontology, which was the one that he was choosing to adopt for this given conversation, which was ISR. He said what it means to exist is for us to have information on it. And I said, well, why is ISR true? The ISR theory of meta ontology. Why is that? I asked for motivation, for justification for that. Then he just didn't track that like multiple times. He kept on thinking I was asking for justification on his definition, which is very trivially stupid, right? No one would ever do that. Why would I ever do that? Right? Because obviously it's just going to be stipulated for what he means when he says God exists. Right? So when I asked for ISR being true, which was what his argument presupposed, obviously I'm asking for this theory of meta ontology being something which is actually going to be truth tracking onto reality, such that when he says God exists, which presumably is going to be saying God exists within reality, is going to be taking that thing's actually going to be something that's correlative to reality. And I also gave the other objection, which was such that I take ISR, or at least I take information as necessary, but or I could take information as necessary, but insufficient condition for existence, which is why I put ISR in question in the first place. And secondly, I could also take it to be the case that we could have things which exist without having any sort of information on them, which obviously will just be referential, or we'll just be talking about some sort of epistemic limitation for talking about different things which we do not know about. He just didn't address any of this. Like, I think it was pretty bad for him. Okay, yeah, I'm done.
All right.
Alrighty.
All my notes in the chat. Hold on. And Free, you could text me what you wanted to say in DMs. By the way, I'm not sure, you're typing a little bit. Now, given from what I'm kind of reading, I'm kind of lenient towards Capp. Let me try to reread this last part of my notes. 1 second. I'm not certain. Hold on, chill out, cause okay. Now, yeah, you guys should have debated longer, and half of what you said in your conclusions should have kind of been brung up in the debate. I mean, I don't think it resembles too much, but given this, I'm probably gonna have to say Capp 1. This you invoked ISR within your scheme, if I'm not mistaken, Capp. And your justification is in virtue of the analyticity. Val kept on asking for the motivation, and you kept on acting as if the motivation of the analyticity was the sufficient condition, which I thought that Val should have said, or should have put into question, how is it analytic, or how would this serve as a sufficient motivator that helps give incentives towards your conceptual scheme. I don't know who's speaking, what your mind. Yeah, come on, careless, careless, careless.
Oh, my fault. My fault.
Okay. Yeah, I know the conceptual scheme is the linguistical framework. So no, you didn't put into question directly the analyticity. You kept on saying, what's the motivation for the conceptual scheme of your meta ontology being true? That's the only reason I'm giving it towards Capp. Now, and another, actually, that's one of the only. I actually have one more reason. Capp kept on saying that um, it was indispensable, or information is this indispensable construct within our reality, which you agreed with. So you said it was necessary. But what you really said was, I'm not sure if this information is going to be the sufficient condition. And in virtue of that, I could have said you could have pressed him there, but he filled in the sufficient condition in virtue of the analyticity. And that's why Cap won.
Alrighty, man. So with that being said, we in the KG lounge and the judge flow gave it to Cap. So we ended the recording now.